Hi, friends. Welcome to the conversation today. We are going to talk about Kintsugi as an amazing art form. And I've got a great guest who is going to help us realize that instead of being broken pieces, we are actually these beautiful works of art that the broken pieces allow us to mend and become something new. Welcome to today's episode of the Grounding Journey podcast, powered by My Happy Life Box. Are you feeling the desire to live a more vibrant, happy, and joyous life, focused a little more on mindfulness? The My Happy Life Box was created just for you. And right now, we have a special offer for you if you subscribe. To learn more and receive your first box, visit My Happy Life Box. The link's in the show notes. I'm Chris Greer, host of the Grounding Journey podcast. My guest and I will share how we've explored and expanded our life through lessons learned, mistakes, and mindful actions, and most importantly, how we've celebrated the adventure. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. I am so excited to share with you Tiffany Thompson. She is an award-winning singer-songwriter, community leader, and Kintsugi instructor. I know you're like, what? But we're going to talk about it. Her mission is to promote the true, good, and beautiful in audiences. She now conducts Kintsugi workshops across the US at universities, retreat centers, schools, and private gatherings. And that's actually how I found Tiffany. She lives in the next city over, and I got a Eventbrite event about her, one of her events, and I've heard of Kintsugi and just thought it was so neat and chatted with her, checked out her website, and invited her to be a podcast guest. And like the other episodes we've recorded so far this year, this was a conversation long happening. So I know that it's going to be a powerful conversation today. And I'll let Tiffany give the definition, but the theme for today is you're not broken, you're beautiful. So, Tiffany, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to get to talk with you today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I've read your formal introduction and I also prepped you that this is my starter question. Now that I've read your formal introduction, tell us, Tiffany, who your family knows you as, who your friends know you as, who the people in your world really connect with as you.
They would say that I'm just happy to be here.
Nice.
Has always been the joke. I'm the youngest of three kids, two older brothers, have always been an artist, a creative at heart, and I just enjoy life. It's something that at times is a struggle because I feel like I should have more drive or be the best or have this sort of, alpha personality. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I just love to go for walks and literally smell the flowers and paint little pictures and write songs and mend broken mugs. And I think that at my true center, there's a real sense of knowledge that, like, we're just happy to be here and happy to be in this life.
I love that. And I so relate to that. My husband and I were on our dog walk the other day. We take our dogs for a walk every day at lunch. And when we do that, we do 3 to 4 gratefuls each. And his grateful was that he was grateful because of our business and our lifestyle is very different. That he was grateful that he had learned to not settle and not do that every day. And I chuckled and said, "You're welcome." And, he was like, "Yeah, you're right." So I
Nice.
totally relate to that conversation and connection of who you are. So let's also get this out into the conversation. Can you please explain what kintsugi is? And I know we'll talk a lot more about it, but some people will know what it is. They may know what it is if they saw it written down or they've heard of it, and this will all make sense. So let's bring that part into the conversation.
Sure. So, kintsugi, in its simplest explanation, is the Japanese art of mending broken teaware with gold. It is an ancient art form that actually originated in China, moved through Korea, and was popularized in Japan
Oh,
in the 15th, 16th century. That's also when the Japanese tea ceremony was really sort of taking on shape and becoming a core part of culture. And this relationship of the families having a tea bowl or something that was very precious to them, if they got chipped or broken, you would never consider throwing it away. It was a part of your family legacy. And so kin means gold, and tsugi means to mend or to join together generations. And
mm,
so, this idea of one generation maybe breaking the piece or chipping the piece, and then a future generation mending the piece, is a part of the sort of broader story around kintsugi. And if you're familiar with wabi sabi as an aesthetic, it really anchors in imperfection is beauty. And so that is in Japanese culture, kintsugi really is anchored inside of the wabi sabi aesthetic and that understanding of beauty and what art is.
I love all of that. And I know now that we've explained it, our listeners are like, oh, yeah, I've seen pictures of that stuff, or I've heard of things like that. And I think it's so beautiful to talk about taking something broken and putting gold to it and mending it. And I know that there's quite a story behind your journey through discovering Kintsugi and really becoming a part of it. And that's where I want to say, because so often we hear people talk about healing or you're broken or finding pieces, and I just want to really connect with that in the conversation of you're not broken. I love that you said mending together generations, because that's definitely powerful in itself. Just the gold, like it's so beautiful and so elegant to think of.
Yeah, yeah, I think that when we on my journey going through kintsugi, I'm not a master of the craft or a practitioner of it in the traditional form. I use common materials that are food safe and we can use in sort of our daily life, and to bring this artistic process in as a metaphor for understanding what does it mean to be beautiful in our brokenness, and to be able to take a little bird or some sort of a ceramic piece and know that, like, if it falls, if it chips, if it breaks, you can actually use these sort of common materials with some copper powder, or if you have a lot of extra money, some gold power, and mend it together and have it be new as a new creation. I think that to me is really what I journey with, and how the metaphors really come to life for me.
Thank you for the word metaphor, because I could not come up with the word I was trying to say in my last few sentences. And that was the word I was looking for. And you said it so great. What does it mean to be broken in our beautifulness? So tell us about your journey to discover Kintsugi, how you came upon it, and how you fell in love with it.
Yeah. So I was living in New York City. I'm a singer-songwriter. That is my primary art form and what I've done since I was a little girl. And I had the opportunity to meet Makoto Fujimura, who is a Japanese painter. And he had a gallery on the Upper West Side and invited me to write some songs that would interact with his paintings.
Okay.
And so we had this sort of initial event that we collaborated around, and then did a vinyl, which is out, called Lotuses and Mimicry, which took me into this space of sort of mixed medium creations and saying, how can my work as a singer songwriter actually be illuminated and deepened through being in conversation with somebody who's a painter and that physical medium.
Mhm.
And Mako, in his journey of life, which he's written about in an amazing book called Culture Care, has had a lot of trauma. He was a 9/11 survivor. He was in downtown Manhattan on 9/11, and came into contact with Kintsugi during some of his time in Tokyo, visiting his galleries, and really brought an expression of it to a community of artists in New York and gave us the awareness and some skills and trained us up to be able to lead small groups of people through this contemporary approach to the ancient art form. And now there are probably about 40 or 50 of us
Mm,
who practice this and lead community groups through it, always with a spirit of humility, because I am not a Kintsugi master, but
mm.
I think that artists are really excellent learners, and you kind of enter this approach and say, okay, I can do this with my hands. I can be one step ahead in the learning process and then bring people into it with me. And it's been such an amazing way to engage with retreat centers and small groups and larger groups at companies and stuff. So it's been a gift to me in my own life to be able to say, what are the things that are broken around me, and maybe the act of mending and thinking about the possibility of mending helps me move forward with that kintsugi mindset.
You are saying so many fantastic things that I can't write them all down as fast as I want to. So I'm just having to write down the moment. Of course, it doesn't help that the cat just jumped up and is
I love it. I love the cat. It's great.
and you held your composure as she walked through the screen twice really well. And I'm really impressed with that.
Love it.
So it sounds like a really neat journey. And I know that you and I talked when you were doing your class before about the way you guide people through it and what that looks like. Will you share a little bit about how you take the actual art and the process into the healing and the connection and spirituality for a person?
Yeah. So Mako always really started the process with beholding. And beholding is a deeply meditative moment when you really look at the brokenness and you're not trying to figure it out or fix it or, think about why it got broken or get upset by those things. You're just really letting it be broken in your hands, within your gaze. And that step of beholding is such an important first step in kintsugi because we're not fixing things, we're mending things. And those are very different postures towards brokenness. And to look at something to fix it is to sort of, break it down into like the structure, the pieces, and get your materials ready because you're trying to take it back as close to what it was before as possible. Whereas that spiritual posture of beholding and letting it be its new thing with its broken pieces takes you into the second part, which is really the mending and your hands getting dirty and bringing the pieces back together, finding these cracks. Sometimes we'll actually get out a diamond file and sort of carve down the edge a little bit, file it down to create an increased gap between the two pieces.
Okay.
And to me, that is actually such a reflection of the spiritual journey
Mhm.
because, you get broken, and the last thing you want to do is get a diamond file on your edge, grinding you down more,
Yeah.
right? It's like already snapped, like the brokenness has occurred, like let's move on to the gold. But the process of kintsugi, there's so many steps before the gold. And that pacing and the slowing down and the micro failures that happen along the way in those steps connect you with your piece to a level of emotional resonance that I don't think is possible if you just like put it back together and then painted the gold. It's the pace of it and the slowness and the what Mako calls the slow art of it all that
Mm.
actually allows you to enter that spiritual spaciousness with the process.
I love the visual that you kind of that was going on in my imagery for me while you're talking about it. And when you said not fixing, we're mending, And it's a different stance because we're not taking it back to where it was, but loving it as something new. And for me, I've done so much heart work over the years, and heart is so relevant to me and has been for several years. And so often we think about, oh, my heart's broken. I've got to put it back together. And I don't know where I read it, but something about living with a broken, open heart.
Mm,
So instead of trying to put your heart back together, knowing that those cracks and those spaces is where the light comes in. So to me, that has so much connection to your art form of I can visualize my heart with all these spaces and all this beautiful gold filling that space back up because that's where the light comes in. That's where the brokenness allows for the expansion. And when you said earlier that one generation breaks it and the next generation mends it, thinking of the heart of one experience breaks it and one experience mends it. So to
mm.
me, that's the visual that was really happening as you were speaking of the filing down that edge of the jaded heart so that it can be a little smoother and a little softer as it expands.
I love that. And I've seen some people bring in bowls that are missing pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always this moment when you have a missing piece in your heart or in your mug, whichever
Mm-hmm.
one you're looking at. Uh, and we can feel like there's a loss because there's a piece missing. But sometimes when you put it back together without the piece, it actually creates the sort of space and grace for
Mm-hmm.
everything else to really fall into place. And that's been such a learning experience with Kintsugi because we often have this desire to use every single piece. And I think that when we give ourselves the grace to let something go
Mm-hmm.
and be in the past, we actually can enjoy the process of mending a little bit more and be a little bit more present to it because of the fact that that space is there. So I think that the missing pieces are one of the most interesting parts of Kintsugi and I think of life in some ways.
I love that. That took the whole broken open heart a little bit more to me of, okay, let's leave this piece off instead. And yeah, I'm gonna have to journal about that later.
Nice.
Uh, and so as we're talking about this, I want to bring in an element of the conversation because I think so often when we have spiritual conversations, there's this element of, oh, but I was raised this way and it goes different from where I am. And you are the daughter of a pastor. Um, Somebody's knocking on my front door. Give me just a second. It's the neighbor back. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm going to hit pause just for a second. So, going into that, we're raised differently than where we are now. You had an interesting upbringing because you are the daughter of a pastor and did missionary work as a kid, right?
I did. Yeah, my dad was a seminary student and started a church in Dubuque, Iowa. And then we lived in Moscow, Russia in the early 90s and in Austin, Texas after that.
So, how does that, um, I mean, share a little bit about that experience that you were raised there and you've explored lots of different cultures and different beliefs and what that's looked like for you. I
Yeah,
know
I
that's a
would
loaded question.
no, happy to share. For me, I think that faith has evolved from being something that was of my parents to being of myself. And I think that that journey is hard in any node of worldview that you're born into something like really strong. And so I'm grateful to my father and to my family for the legacy of Christian practice and tradition that I was born into. And many things are still dear to me about it. And also having traveled a lot and gone on my own journey, and I love psychology. I love, Eastern spirituality. I love Western spirituality. I love the practice of yoga. I think for me, I find the spaciousness of a spiritual practice that you're really constantly seeking and learning to be the place that I find resonance, and that kintsugi is a very spacious art form in the sense that, um, you know, Bono once said, if you're looking for God in U2's music, you'll find God there. And if you're not, then you'll probably just enjoy some pop tunes. And I think that that's an invitation that we have across all of our life. If you are looking for something deeper, I think that that depth is there for you, whether it's the art of kintsugi or a song that I've released that's a pop song, or a passage from an ancient text or a wisdom scripture. I think that all those things are places that we can find that depth in spiritual life.
I think you said it so eloquently when you said faith was of your parents and is now of yourself. Because I think, isn't that the journey? Isn't that part of the experience? And people who have listened to some of my past podcasts, my dad was a Jesuit when he met my mom, who was 11 years younger than him. And he was a volunteer firefighter, and they just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And when I was in sixth grade, I was raised Catholic, but in sixth grade, my parents allowed me to choose my faith.
Mm,
So since then, it has been a fun journey of, as you said, moving from my parents' faith to a faith of myself. And it's just such a neat ability to find spirituality and really allow it to expand you and help you move through. And I think spirituality is such a part of learning so much and kind of cherry picking what you want, what resonates for you, where
mm,
religion is this is how it is, this is what you take. But spirituality is this beautiful dance. And just for the reference, because you're talking about music, it's almost this sonnet that you get to put together and
hmm.
orchestrate your own music with your own notes of what sounds good to you, because some music my son loves and some music I love, but it's really finding that rhythm of life and what resonates, and that changes throughout different times and different experiences where you are in life.
Definitely. I use the word resonance all the time in my life. I think that for me, there's something mysterious about the idea that there is an eternal soul. I
Hmm.
don't know what that looks like,
Right.
or how it works,
I
or
believe it, but I don't know what it is.
I don't know. I don't know anything about it, And but um, if there is this space within us that is resonating with these different beautiful and truthful things, I think part of our work, maybe the majority of our work, is to engage in that resonance and
Mm-hmm.
to create permission within ourselves to like accept those invitations, both from without and from within.
Hmm.
And I think that that is a very difficult task to do, because sometimes the things that we resonate with, call us to a higher self or push us to leave something that we don't want to let go behind. And whatever that journey is, I think that being willing to listen to the promptings uh, is is the journey.
It's so beautiful when we can listen, and it can be really painful. As you said, there's those
Mm-hmm.
experiences that we don't want to be a part of. Um, but what's beautiful of it is there's always something better. Like, we don't know what's on the other side or what's coming. But when we give those moments of surrender to the magic, to the beauty, to the experience, there's always a lesson, there's always an experience, there's always something on the other side for us.
Yeah, I think surrender is a huge part of kintsugi and a huge part of all art making. You know, you start with something and you start with an idea, probably an intention, these things, but it doesn't always go the way that you want it to or that you think it's going to go.
Mm,
And I think that in Kintsugi, I have so many times when somebody will bring in a piece and they have a real plan for what they want to do with it, and the piece just sort of fights with them. They
mm,
can't get this to come back together, or that keeps falling apart, or they really want to keep all of the pieces. They don't want to let any of them go, and they only have so much time to sort of work on it. And so there are different choices that get made in that moment of, how are you going to engage with surrender, and how are you going to engage with tension and the friction with the piece. And there's a lot to be learned in that space.
that is really fascinating because when you said surrender, I wasn't sure how you were going to bring that in. Um, and of course, you talk about the art, and I immediately take it to the broken heart. So I need to find a heart sculpture, crack it, and
Yeah.
bring it, and let's do a class with it. That, like that's so much of life, of the surrender of those pieces that you were just saying. You have a vision of what it's going to look like, and letting go of those moments to see what it should look, or what it's going to look like next, what the new version is going to be, as you kind of said earlier. So I love that you brought that in.
Hmm. Yeah, Mako uh, is really beautiful on teaching around the idea of new creation,
Mhm.
and how when you do the process of kintsugi in the way that I was trained to lead it, we always name the piece at the end, or give an invitation to name the piece, because when you name it, it shifts from being sort of this abstract object to being a real thing that you care for, because that act of naming is so intimate and personal. And so I think that uh, as you come to this recognition of how am I journeying with this piece, and what am I learning from it, what am I letting go, how is it something that's new, the naming in our lives, which is a form of storytelling, right, of meaning making,
Mm.
gives us this space to sort of say, okay, this is what happened with that broken part connecting to this broken part. And we do that all the time in our daily lives as meaning making beings, storytellers. And in Kintsugi, one of the ways we do that is through actually naming the piece so that it journeys with you in that way.
Wow. I'm going to have to listen to this episode again so that I can take my own notes, because I'm trying so hard to stay in the conversation, and I just want to write down everything you're saying so that I can then incorporate it into my life. Which makes me my next question of, so you've experienced this amazing art, you've studied with an amazing mentor. How has Kintsugi affected, changed, evolved your life, your experiences, and just kind of going through the day to day of life?
Well, on the smallest level, when something breaks, I have friends take pictures of it and send it to me. So that has been the most whimsical and wonderful thing about entering on this kintsugi journey, I guess, 3 years ago now in 2021. Yeah, that's hilarious. And, when I'm at events or at places and something falls, people bring it to me. In Winston-Salem, where I live, there's a couple of coffee shops that I've given them like buckets and asked if they could like save any of their broken plates or cups for me, so that I
Hmm.
can use them in my practice or give them away to people at events. So it's very tactical, like
Nice.
that's really changed. And then on the more metaphorical, spiritual level, it is a beautiful metaphor that provides you a sort of scaffolding, for looking at the broken areas of your life and to slow down and get curious
Mm,
around how am I dealing with this failure? You know, am I taking a kintsugi approach to it, or am I taking a fix it approach to it? And I think that that question you can apply to any area of your life. You can apply it to your work life, to your personal life, to your romantic life, to these things. And there are moments when I will sort of ask myself that question and say, actually, I'm trying to fix it.
mm,
I can sense, you know, within myself the managers and the exile parts of my internal family system, right, are like trying to fix and control this thing versus that like real center self space, being curious and trying to connect things and
mhm,
trying to be courageous about it. And so that has been the other way that it's really helped me is it gives me the language to really just do some inner work through its metaphor.
mm. I love that. It's hard when I'm so when you give me so much thought provoking, it's hard to lead the podcast. I just kind of sound like, huh, okay. So you mentioned earlier that you actually met Makoto because you were collaborating on some music with him. And I recall that you had won second place for a song about anti sex trafficking. So, how has your music been affected, evolved since you started the art?
Yeah, so I am, along with being a singer songwriter and doing kintsugi, I am a team builder. I lead team development and training
Oh, okay.
programs for companies and retreat centers and all different sorts of groups. And this has really shown me something that I had a hunch was true, but I hadn't had my own practice of it yet, which is basically cross training.
Okay.
So, you know, if you have a core sport or a core art form or a core thing that's like you're really good at that, a way to get better at that is to actually practice something else.
Okay.
Because when you practice a different sport or a different art form, you enter a beginner's mind again and
Okay.
you learn to learn again. And so, whatever plateau you've hit in your core work, which for me is being a singer songwriter, um, doing kintsugi for me isn't about becoming a kintsugi master. It's about learning the details and the steps and the process of kintsugi and just getting a little bit better at that. And by doing that there, I've come back to my music and like brought so much more curiosity and attention to detail and creativity into my songwriting because I like relearned how to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that regardless of what the main thing is, having this other thing, not like necessarily a hobby, but something you're intentionally working on in order to like strengthen your ability to learn and focus,
Mm-hmm.
that has been amazing and something that now I am a huge advocate for. That's why I love bringing like kintsugi or music into more corporate environments because we're so used to like executing our daily tasks. But actually, this work of sort of, you know, cross training through a totally different thing can make us even more efficient and effective at that thing that we kind of think of as our main thing.
And that's a great element that you can bring into it of coming back to it at the beginning, coming back to it as a beginner without the extra knowledge. I know I love reading books that take you back to basics about
Mm,
spirituality or just having those conversations that maybe you already know this and you've experienced it, but you get to look at it with fresh eyes. It's kind of that childlikeness that you get to bring back to the experience so that you can grow from it.
definitely. I mean, I think in many religions, it's the children who point the way.
Mhm. Yes.
And, you know, why is that? Why is it that the child points the way? And I think in my own journey, I think it's often because they know there are things that they don't know. And
Hmm.
they have this sense that there are things that they don't know, and they're eager to learn and to get close to something and to sort of put their face in it and really explore it. And the sort of fear of it disappointing them, or being hard, those scars and those habits of fear aren't built up yet. So I think when we come to a new art form and we just kind of enter in with that childlike spirit and an enjoyment of beginning, it can really enliven us on a inner, spirit level.
Well, I think when we bring that childlikeness to it, we let go of the perfectionism
Yep.
that has controlled us from enjoying it.
Yep.
And we allow ourselves to be more playful. It's like one of my things, and this could probably trigger some people to have a whole nother conversation. But I know one time I called myself a girl, and a friend quickly corrected me and said, "No, you're a woman." And I was like, I want to be a girl because she's childlike and playful and doesn't have a lot of responsibilities. There's enough of my life that I am a strong willed woman. But every once in a
Yeah.
while, I just want to be a girl who's young and playful and childlike. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you talk about it helped you to feel free to learn and to come back to basics, that's where I went with it, um,
Yes.
bringing that childlike innocence to the game.
Play is such an essential part of the human experience, I think.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
adults don't get enough of it, especially in America. I think there's such a drive to succeed constantly. I'm a culprit in my daily life, and giving yourself that space to really just enjoy something that you're not good at and you don't need to be. You're just doing it because it's worth doing is and that's enough. I think that goes back to a posture that I try to have just in life. Your first question of, just happy to be here. Like how do we can remember that we didn't choose to get born in this moment, and we're entered into this universe in time and space. And so, how can we engage in that and contribute toward its flourishing, not just of ourselves, but to humanity as a whole?
Mm, yeah. It is, as you said, just happy to be here and to get to have the experiences and to bring some of that playful lifeness back into it, of
Yeah.
letting go of the pressure of being broken and looking at the expanse and the mending to be something new. Like
Yeah.
we've talked before, and I've done some research about the art form, and this conversation today has given me so much more to look at and to reflect on myself, that I'm really grateful for the conversation, and it always happens when it's meant to bring the depth to it. But thank you
Yeah.
so much for
You're so welcome.
those key words that I've written down that I'm definitely going to ponder and kind of bring back into my forethought.
Awesome.
So I've listened because I started following you on Facebook, Instagram about a year ago, and I've seen little blips of your music and feel that your personality really radiates and shines through that. And I would love for people to
Mm.
definitely check out your music so that they can connect with you on another level. Where can they find stuff? How can people connect with you?
Yeah, so my website is tiffanythompsonmusic.com, and that has information about everything from Kintsugi to work that I do in advocacy through music here in Winston-Salem, working with people experiencing homelessness, as well as my new album that I'm writing this year. I'm currently sort of demoing it out and playing lots of different shows in the area to get the songs under my fingertips. So that's all on my website. And then Tiffany Thompson Music is also my Instagram handle. And whenever you're searching for me, always add music onto it, because there's other Tiffany Thompsons that are not as wholesome as I am. And so I always encourage people to just search Tiffany Thompson Music. But that's what it is on both my website as well as Instagram, which are the two places that I'm really active. And my email list, which is how you also heard about my Ireland trip that I went on, is a place that I do more prose writing and keep people updated on events. But I do think that as an artist, if you can accompany your poetic art form or your visual art form with prose, that gives people a place to like really engage in the thoughts behind the work. That's an important part of my artistic practice. So I always encourage people to join my email list, and they can do that from my website.
And I will say it's a great place to be because I've been on your email list for quite some time and really love hearing about stuff. And you're so close to me that I need to get out and get to one of your shows or something.
Yeah,
It's not that far. We were over in Winston this week at Ronaldo Gardens. So
love it. Yes, come over.
definitely encourage people to get signed up on your email list and to follow you. And thank you, Tiffany, so much for bringing the conversation. Thank you for giving me some new stuff to ponder and think
Yeah,
about. And I really hope that the listeners will be as thought provoked as I was today.
I love it. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening to today's conversation. I hope that the insight that Tiffany brought about art, mending, and broken pieces being left out will inspire you to live more connected and happy to be here. If you want support, remember, we've got the My Happy Life box, and we've got special offers for you now. Visit myhappylifebox.com to learn more about the journey.